Right, next up we've got Mark Gurney. That's perfect. So Mark is an ecologist with the National Trust and a keen field botanist who's been recording and working with plants for much of his life. He's talking to us today about how BSBI data helps the National Trust. So I'll hand over to you, Mark.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk today about how the National Trust uses BSBI data. I expect most of you are familiar with the National Trust, but just in case you're not, it has about 251,000 hectares of land, which is about 1% of the UK. That's spread across England, Wales and Northern Ireland. It acquired its first nature reserve in 1899 at Wicken Fen. And since then, it's either accidentally or intentionally managed to acquire a lot of very good botanical sites, including about 100,000 hectares of priority habitats. So that's a big estate to try and work out what's going on. So can the BSBI data help us with this? And the answer is, of course, yes, of course it can. The BSBI database is massive and contains loads and loads of records. About almost 1.5 million plant records from National Trust land, and this is just since 2000 we're looking at here in the BSBI database. I compared that with our own data set, and you can see it's about 7 times as many records in the BSBI data as there are in the National Trust's own data set. I was keen to see how this translates into what we know about the species at National Trust places. So each bar on this, this chart here is the vascular plant species list for a National Trust place, according to the BSBI database in blue on the left and the National Trust data in grey on the right. And you can see that this is a very one-sided Christmas tree. The BSBI side is much more vigorous than the National Trust side. So it's clear that the BSBI data are a major source of what we know about vascular plants on National Trust land, which is brilliant. So what can it tell us? What can it do that's useful for us? Well, one of the things I've been looking at recently is finding out where our significant plants are. So this map here shows the proportion of the British or Irish range of a species broken down by 1 kilometre square on monad. So if a plant is found in, say, 4 monads in Ireland, and one of those is on a National Trust place, there will be a 25% sized circle at that place. So basically, bigger circles mean more important populations. And what happens at those places could affect, 25, 50, even 100% of the British or Irish population of that species. So these are plants and places where we're really focusing our effort to make sure we're doing the right thing for these plants. BSBI data, of course, does extend off of National Trust land. We recognise the existence of other land within the UK. And this is really good because it helps us put things in context. So that list contains 49 endangered or critically endangered species, and about 90 for which the Trust has potentially 10% or more of the British or Irish population. And they include things that I expect a lot of you will be familiar with, like fringed gentian and red helleborine and the lizard clovers, and also some things that might be a bit more obscure, like Bristol whitebeam and dwarf spike rush. And we are looking at these plants in these places now, assessing how they're doing with help from the BSBI data and BSBI members, and looking at any threats that they're facing to make sure that we're doing the best we can to help those that are in trouble and to ensure that we're maintaining the populations of those that are still doing okay. I don't really have much to say about this slide. Now, following Jay's talk, he's mentioned a lot about woodland establishment and how it's important to maintain open habitats, but what we've done here is we've combined the BSBI data with the Plantat data that Simon mentioned briefly yesterday. So this is a map, again by monad, of all the rare, scarce and threatened plants that are associated with open habitats, and we've used this as one of the layers in one of Trust's opportunity maps to make sure that we're not trying to establish woodland in places where there are plants that need open conditions rather than trees. So where we've got information on population size or particularly detailed fine scale mapping, the BSBI data is really good for helping us track change as well. So this lovely flower-rich turf is at Cowston and Cherhill Down, which is not far from me in Swindon. And the Wiltshire Botanical Society have done a very, very detailed mapping of a lot of sites in the county at 10-metre resolution or even 1-metre resolution of rare, scarce and threatened plants. And so the map that they produced a few years ago, we've picked some species here. This gives us a really good idea of where these plants are found on the site. And now tall grass is starting to take over some of these places, so we're trying to graze them harder with cattle, which will change the conditions. So that map gives us a very good baseline to see how those plants are responding to the changes in grazing. It's also not just about plants. So that detail map was very helpful when I went back a couple of years ago to try and find the populations of downland shieldbug. This is an insect that's scarcer even than bastard toadflax, which is its sole food plant. But because we knew where the bastard toadflax was on the downs, it was very easy to target our searching for the shieldbug, and we were able to confirm that it was still there and had a good healthy population. And if you attended the summer meeting in 2017, your records from Greg Vauer were very helpful when we went to see whether the scarce plants were still there this year. We were able to confirm that most of the plants that live on the steep limestone slopes are doing quite well, but those in the grassland at the top seem to be suffering. So we're now making changes to the grazing, and the BSBI data and what we found this year will help us again keep track of how that does and whether it's successful in bringing those plants back. It's also very good for new sites. So the Trust does have quite a good data set on some of the scarcer species on its land, but obviously we haven't surveyed bits of land that we don't all own, but where we're acquiring new places, we can use the BSBI database to tell us what's there, which will inform how we can manage the site. At a site we recently acquired down in the southwest, there were some records of yellow bird's nest from the beech woodland, which was really important because it's quite a dense plantation, and we were thinking of trying to open it up to make the habitat a bit more diverse. But knowing where these species are, which often thrive under the darker bits of the canopy, is very useful and helps us to avoid causing damage to them. And knowing where the plants are is very useful for research. The Trust is very keen to make its land available for research. I was contacted by my old PhD supervisor a couple of years ago, asking whether we could go and get some field flea wort to contribute to this study on Tephroceras in Europe. And because we had that very detailed map that the Botanical Society had done, we were able to find and pick a leaf, despite the fact that there were no plants in flower. Stock footage here to guide us to where they were. So that leaf went off, and it was used in this paper. Which, if you haven't seen it, it's quite interesting to see the relationships between our plants, especially the enigmatic subspecies that's endemic to Holy Island, and how that fits in with the rest of field fleawort and across the rest of its range. And we're very keen to work with the BSBI. Now I think people are in the sort of a post-Atlas world, apart from those who I know are very busy actually writing and producing it. But for the field work seems to have now ended, and people are asking, what can we do? And they're talking about sometimes more standardized monitoring, more work on habitats and ecology and conservation. And that would be great to get more data on those things. The Trust already uses the National Plant Monitoring Scheme to work out what's happening to some of the habitats on its land. So if you're involved with that, or if you'd like to be involved with that, that would be great. But we hope there'll be lots of opportunities for you to get involved. So if you do want to help out, do get in touch with me or your local National Trust property. And if you already do that, then thank you. Thank you to everyone who records plants on Trust land, who puts records into database, who spends hours typing things into MapMate and uploading things and maintaining the BSBI distribution database, because it's a brilliant resource that's really useful for us. Thank you.